Hello and welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. In this week's tutorial, I'm walking you through 3 different winter watercolor texture tricks. So what you see on screen is exactly what we're going to be creating together. I'm going to walk you through each one, and as I explain each one, I will walk you through the different supplies used to create it and execute it. For all the supplies for all these tricks, just click into the video description and they're all listed right there for you. So we're going to start off with this one, so I'm going to move everything out of the way and we will get started. Okay, so the watercolor paper that I'm using for all of these tricks is this Canson cold press 140 pound watercolor paper. I love the larger size. It's a much better value if you are watercoloring quite a bit. So I just take out one of these sheets and then I cut it down. So I cut it down into a bunch of smaller sheets. These are all size 5.5 inches by 4.25 inches, which is the same as an A2 size card. So I've got these blank cards right here, and after I'm done, I can always affix them onto it and then create greeting cards out of them. So it's a really nice size to work with. So this is an A2 size card. All right, so I got my watercolor paper right here, and then I'm using this masking fluid. It's got a needle on the end, so you can do this really fine, intricate, detailed work with watercolor. And then for the watercolor, we're actually using watercolor brush pens for all of these tricks. The watercolor brush pens I'm using are these Brush Marker Pros by Karen. These are Karen markers. You can see there's a ton of colors in here. I love these. They're super vibrant, highly pigmented, so whenever you are blending them with water, there's so much pigment. It goes a really long ways, and as much as I've been using these, I haven't worn out a single brush yet. So I've been super impressed with these watercolor brush pens. If you've been on my channel very long, you know that I use watercolor brush pens a lot, and I have to tell you, like, these ones are really incredible. I love working with them. So for all of these projects, I'm kind of using this bluish purple color scheme. So I am using, let me just grab a bunch of these out of here. These are going to be my main winter colors for all these tricks. So I'm going to set these aside and then I'll read them off to you. So I'm going to move this out of the way. Okay, so for the blues, this one is sky blue, this one's cyan, this one's sapphire blue, the purple is plum, and this darker blue is indigo blue. So to get started, first we need to lay down our masking fluids. So you can just choose any style of snowflakes that you would like to include. So I'm just going to lay down my masking fluid with a bunch of different snowflakes. Okay, so once you have your masking fluid all laid down, you want it to fully dry before you move on to the next step. And once it's fully dried, this is what it will look like. So it's kind of greenish, but it's totally clear and you can touch it and nothing will get on your hands. So this one has fully dried and now we can start watercoloring. So for my paintbrush, I am using a Pentel fine tip water brush right here. And then I've got my markers, my Karen markers, and I'm also going to be using some salt for this. So the first thing we want to do is lay down our colors. So I will grab my colors and I'll just put different colors, splotches. You want to give them a little bit of space between them. That way you get these really beautiful blends between and the white space between them. Okay, so once you have all of your splotches down here, you're going to take your water brush and squeeze a little bit of water on the tip. I've got a piece of paper towel right here just to wipe off any excess water. That way you don't get too many water pools here as you work. So I'm just going to squeeze a little and then you can start blending. You can see how beautifully pigmented these watercolor brush markers are. And you just want to kind of swirl the brush tip around and you want to blend everything out so you don't see these splotches as obviously. So I'm working kind of quickly because I want to keep the surface wet enough where I can put down salt to get that last bit of texture on it. And you can go straight to the edge of the card if you'd like. With your texture, I like coming kind of close, but not all the way. I kind of like these rough edges around the outside. Okay, so now before it dries, I'm going to sprinkle some salt on. So I've just got some regular table sea salt, and I'm just going to sprinkle it on top. And then you just want it to fully dry, and once it's dry, we'll wipe off the salt. So I'll let this dry, and then I will be back. Okay, once it's all dry, I'm going to take my paper towel and wipe away the salt that's still on the surface that's kind of stuck there. All right, and then once the salt is gone, you can start lifting up your masking fluid. So you can just pull and peel. Okay, so that is texture trick number 1. You can see all these nice little crystallized areas. If you wanted even more of them, just put more salt on, and remember to keep everything really wet. That way the salt soaks it up and then expands it out to create that crystallized look. All right, so now we're going to move on to trick number 2. So this is the final outcome of trick number 2. So I've got my watercolor paper right here. And once again, all the supplies are right in the video description. So just click in there if you're wondering about any of these supplies. So I've got artist tape right here, which works really well with watercolor paper, with putting it on so you can create some negative space to put whatever lettering that you'd like on here. So I'm just going to kind of roughly eye out my length of my ribbon right here. Once you have your ribbon, a nice little trick for creating the ribbon, the ends, is on the end, you cut with your scissors, and then the piece that you cut off, hold on to that, come to the other end, and place it on the other end of the tape, and then use that as a guide, and then the ends of your ribbons will match. Okay, so I'm just going to eye this and place it on here as close to center as possible. Okay, so that is step 1. Step 2 is we're going to draw our design on here. So I'm going to grab my Caron brush markers again and just do some swirls. And make sure they come off the ribbon. That way we can see the ribbon as being negative space once everything blends out. So my goal here is to just make it look like some swirls, as if the wind picked up the snow and swirled it around. Okay, so for this one, it's going to get a little bit wet here. So what I like to do is tape down my card. Since I'm going to make all of my texture go straight to the edge, I'm actually going to do that trick where you roll up the tape and make it a double-sided piece of tape right here. Stick it to the back of my card. All right, so this one's going to get a little bit messy. What I've got is, this is a 2.5 ounce spray bottle, and inside of it I have half a tablespoon of table salt, this exact salt. And then what I did is I just shook it up like this, so everything got really well mixed. So this is salt water in here. And then what I do is I just spray the top. I'm kind of like a foot away from it. You don't want to get too close, otherwise you'll lose some of these lines. You just want the edges to start getting a little bit blurry. And that feels good. And then you're just going to let it dry. And you can see already that the edges are getting all crystallized because there's salt in that water. Versus if it were just regular water, they wouldn't be becoming as crystallized. So you want that to totally dry. If you want to add some more texture, just lay down some salt on top of it and you'll get even more of those like crystallized areas. Okay, if you want to darken up any areas, you can always go back in. I noticed that some of my lines are getting a little lost right here, so I'm just going to go over them. All right, and then just give it another spray. And then let it dry. Okay, so once it's dry, you want to wipe off all the excess salt that's on top. And then when you peel your ribbon off, your tape ribbon, one thing I learned in art school that has helped me a lot is when you peel tape off, you want to peel it at an angle. You don't want to peel it straight across. And this will give you a less of a chance of ripping the actual paper that's underneath it. So pull it at an angle and then you'll be all set. All right, so I'm going to take the tape off the back of it, and this made it so it didn't warp or bow as the paper dried. And there we go. Now you can write whatever message you'd like on the ribbon. So you could call this done if you'd like, but Caron Markers also creates these deco brushes, and these are metallic markers, which I think take your piece that much further by just adding in some extra metallic details on it. So you can see there's a bunch of really pretty colors in here, so I'm going to grab the blue, the purple, and the silver. Make it super wintry. So all I'm going to do is add in some extra lines of silver, just really lightly in here, following the same curves as the original markers. Okay, so that is trick number 2, and hopefully you can see the shine of those metallic deco markers. I really love those. They're so vibrant. All right, we are moving on to trick number 3. So this one's pretty cool because it looks like a really, really close-up shot of crystals. So it's a really fun technique to use, and you can put lettering on top of it. You can use the same method we used in trick number 2 for creating a tape ribbon, so you can put lettering in the negative space later on if you'd like. For this one, I lettered right on top of it just so you can see what the difference looks like. So for this one, you're going to need some cling wrap or saran wrap, just basic household cling wrap. And then once again, we're using our spray bottle. This is the salt water. And then we're going to finish everything off with our deco brush by Karen Markers. This is my Tombow Mono drawing pen. This is the 05 size. So we're going to put this nice little black shadow that's nice and tight to the lettering just to pop it up from the background a little bit. And then the colors are the same that we've been using for the last 2 projects. So the first thing we want to do is grab our cling wrap, and you want a piece that's a little bit larger than your watercolor paper. And you're going to set it right on top so you have an idea of how big of the area you need to put your brush markers on. So I'm going to grab my brush markers and I'm just going to paint little squiggles. Okay, once you have all of your squiggles drawn, you're going to set this aside. And now we're going to affix this to our cutting mat once again with the double-sided tape. Okay, affix it onto your cutting mat, and now we're all good to go. So what you want to do is spray the entire surface. Make sure your cling wrap is out of the way when you do this. So you're going to make it pretty wet. You want it wet enough where it's shiny, but it's not soaked where you're getting these giant pools of water. So that looks pretty good. And now what you're going to do is just grab your cling wrap and place it right on top. And then kind of move the color around with your finger on top of the plastic wrap so you're not getting any of it right on your fingers as you do this. Okay, and now you want to move and manipulate the cling wrap to get those crystal lines. So I'm just going to move this around. And you want them going in a bunch of different directions. Okay, and now you just wait. You let it dry, and once this is dry, I will be back. Okay, so this has been drying for about 10 to 15 minutes. If you want harder lines, I like the really softness of these lines, which is why you may think that I lift the cling wrap a little prematurely where it's not totally dry, but it's almost dry, just because I like that softer edge look. If you like harder lines, then just let it dry overnight or for a few hours and you'll be fine. But now that it's dried for about 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to lift it up and you can see those really soft edges. And because we used salt water in the spray bottle instead of regular water, you're going to see our edges be just a little bit more crystallized than they would have if it were just regular water. So I'm just going to gently lift this up so we can see how it's looking. Okay, so that's looking really good. And now we just want it to dry the rest of the way. So I'm going to let this finish drying now without the cling wrap, and then I will be back. Okay, so now this is all done drying and I can remove the tape from the back. Okay, and I'm just going to write my message right on top of it. So once again, I've got my deco brush and I'm just going to write, "Let it snow." Okay, and this can be a little bit hard to read because of the silver and the light blue interacting together. So just to make it pop and lift off the page just a little bit more, once this is dry, I'm going to go in with my Tombow Mono drawing pen. This is size 05, and just hit the edges of it. And if you're wondering where to place these lines, I have a cheat sheet, which I'll leave a link to in the video description as well. So you can just download that and then you'll know exactly where to place your lines if you're ever unsure when it comes to putting in shadows. Okay, so that is texture trick number 3. So there we go, all 3 winter watercolor texture tricks. So you can see we've got a lot of different options depending on what you're going for. And once again, all the links to all the supplies are right in the video description. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can be notified of new tutorials just like this one in the future. For more watercolor tutorials and freebies, head on over to my site, every-tuesday.com. You can also find me over on Instagram. My handle is everytuesday. If you try this out and post it to Instagram, I would love it if you tag me. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next week.